Coming to you from Forager Brewery in Rochester, our town.
And I got nothing to show, just climbing this rope right here. And if there's a man upstairs, he kept bringing me rain.
Welcome to Our Town, the show about Rochester. I'm Jen Koski, and we're back at Forager this week, but this time we're in the restaurant space.
The pop-up space here.
Yes.
I'm Eric Olson. Today we are talking with the candidates for the open Ward 6 seat on the Rochester City Council to help you become a more informed voter.
Now, Council Member Sandra Means is not running for re-election this year, so we have two new candidates running for the seat. We welcome Patrick P.J. Day and Annalisa Johnson.
Welcome to you both. Let's begin by hearing a little bit about each of you. Little bio. PJ, you go first.
Well, I'm Patrick Day. I'm 59 years old. I'll be 60 here in December. Born and raised in Rochester. The first 15 years of my life, I grew up Sunset Terrace School. The last 25 years, I've lived over by Gage School, both being in the 6th Ward. So over 40 years of my life, I've lived in the 6th Ward. I'm a real estate appraiser, so I appraise houses the last 25 years. I have a real estate company, or appraisal company.
Great. Thank you. Annalisa, what about you?
I'm a Rochester resident by choice. I moved here in 1999, left for a short period of time, a couple of years, and moved back when I saw how amazing Rochester has become during that time period that I was gone. I am a small business owner. I took my business from a small mobile business to a 2,000 square foot dog training space.
Very good.
Nice, thank you. So we will be hearing more from both candidates on issues important to Rochester, like, of course, DMC, Uber, and food trucks in just a moment. Stay with us.
Our Town is brought to you in part by the following amazing people and organizations.
Prow Company, a hands-on commercial property leasing company, leasing commercial properties in Rochester, Minnesota since 1952. Realtors and brokers welcome. Prow Company. The University of Minnesota Rochester, an undergraduate health sciences university offering education designed to change tomorrow's healthcare. University of Minnesota Rochester, always in the heart of our community. Clements Subaru, proudly partners with award-winning KSMQ Public Television. Clements Subaru of Rochester. Clements' clear value promise is to make buying a car fast, fair, and simple. The Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, and the citizens of Minnesota.
And the members of KSMQ Public Television. Thank you.
I think I finally found my hallelujah.
Hi there, we're back, and we're talking with the candidates for the Rochester City Council Ward 6 seat, PJ Day and Annalisa Johnson.
We flipped a coin before we started. PJ, go first, and our biggest question we've been asking all candidates, Destination Medical Center. As it's gone so far, blessing overall or curse? What do you think?
Well, I think in the long run, it's going to be good for the city of Rochester. In the immediate future, I mean, they're spending a lot of money and not a lot has happened so far, but I think in the long run, it is going to be good for the city. Anytime you get money coming back from St. Paul back to Rochester's got to be good. So,
Annalisa, what do you think?
It can be a little bit of both, depending on how you look at it. You know, one of the things we need to look at is infrastructure. How are we going to build the city in a way that works for everybody, not just the DMC district, which is obviously the most important, but the impact of DMC will affect not just Rochester, but the communities surrounding Rochester. So in that aspect, it's a blessing. We have an opportunity to determine how and where our city is going to grow.
And small businesses too, the impact on those folks. There are a lot of folks, not only in the DMC area, but outside of that are wondering, gee, how will I do business? How will I be able to fit in? Do you find that people you talk to?
I actually know of a business recently that's closing at the end of this month because of their taxes. Honestly, in that area, because they can't afford to run their business and pay their taxes, which is really unfortunate as a small business. So
And do you
there's that
attribute
challenge.
that to DMC?
To the tax increase in those areas, yes.
Because the valuation
The value of the property has gone up.
has gone up.
Yes.
What about small businesses in DMC?
Well, I think it's got to be inclusive for everybody. I mean, everybody in the city is paying into it right now, so I mean, it's got to be inclusive for the whole city. The small businesses, you know, what they're talking about doing downtown, I mean, the infrastructure, like you touched on, I mean, it should include like our sewage plant. I mean, when you grow in the downtown, I mean, we need to have the infrastructure to take care of it. So we need to increase our sewage plant. We need to increase, you know, our electric power, you know, the generators that they're having in our roads. I mean, if you're going to increase everything down there, I mean, you've got to increase the roads and stuff. So infrastructure is a big part of it. As far as the small businesses, I mean, as the city grows, it's going to be good for everybody. So.
Okay, and talking about the infrastructure and buildings and the properties that are affected, what do you think about balancing the historic with the new development?
Well, the City Council the other night passed the Historic Preservation Act, so they have to do some rewording on it, but it's going to come back for a reading here on their next meeting. So I mean, I think it's really not going to affect the historic properties. It's going to be more the historic properties. It's like, what's the building on 4th Street there that they just redid? I mean, it's going to make those buildings better. So yeah, I don't.
Conley Mass building?
Yeah, the Conley Mass building. So I think you're going to see more and more of that. So it's got to be good. So.
Annalisa?
The historic buildings in Rochester, it's a very limited supply of historic buildings left. I think it's important that we preserve what we can. And my understanding that there's some wording that says that the general public could nominate a building, so to speak, to be put on the historic preservation or as a historic preservation building. I think that's okay as long as everybody's on the same page about it. There's just a few. There's so few of them left that I think it's important that we hold on to our history as we continue to grow.
And the city needs to play a role in that. You both, as council members, you will take that on, historic preservation?
I think to a certain degree, I would like to see a private-public the private and public working together to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we just need to make sure that somehow some compensation comes back to the people. I think as far as the houses, it's not going to be such a big item, but you start getting to some of the commercial buildings and that, I mean, somehow there's got to be some compensation and some things to come back to those folks if they do go on the historic register. So.
You touched on taxes. Maximum 10.8% levy increase approved at a recent council meeting. Too high? Too low? I mean, what would you cut or fund, Annalisa?
Oh, what would I cut or fund? That's a really good question because I'm still learning all the ins and outs of city council and what is entailed, so to speak. Everybody, obviously, people think it's too high. A lot of people do. Taxes are high. I'm not going to lie about that. If we can find a way to get around that, that would be great. But you know, we also have roads to take care of and sewage treatment plants that PJ's touched on. Police department, fire department. So those are important things. If we don't have a safe city, we can't have a great community.
Well, I think they did the 10.9, I believe somewhere right there. It can be less than that, and with our growth, I mean, it isn't that big as what it sounds. But safety is a huge thing. I mean, as far as cuts, I think, they had a big list of new people that wanted, the different positions that they wanted to increase. I think we have to keep increasing our safety, police and fire departments, but there's some things like the park department wanted another person for plannings and things like that. I think we have to kind of, work our way into some of that. So.
Okay, that's so specialized, make more specific about what you want to increase and maybe some of the others not so much.
Right.
I mean, the asks, as you were saying, more police, more firemen, street repairs, increases for 125 Live, the Civic Center. Maybe prioritize those?
Right.
And the library is coming forward and saying that they want money for a possible expansion or changes. Do you support that?
Well, we both met with the people at the library, and I tell you that I've grown up here in Rochester, and when we did our forum down there, that was the first time I'd been in there in 20 years. So it gets a lot of use. Audrey had called and went back and gave me a tour of the library. There's a lot.
Audrey Betcher, the executive director.
Had given us a tour, and there's a lot that goes on there that a person doesn't realize. But as far as the $50 million, I think that and they're looking at other alternatives too. But it's more. If you're going to do something like that, I think you need to go out in the community possibly and have some satellites instead of being right downtown. And they were looking at options of doing some sharing, and now they've came back to wanting to be right at the library. But I think as a council member, we'd be open to listen to whatever they propose and see what's best for the city.
And maybe potentially having some branches.
Yeah, I think the satellites would be better. There'd be more parking. Like, I don't know, our sixth ward, the police department just bought the city bought the Think Bank building out there for the police department, and it's a pretty big building. I mean, something like that, if you had a little corner of that as a branch library or something, I mean, there's tons of ideas like that, but there's plenty of parking. People can get to it easy, so more so something like that I think would make a lot more sense than going up on where they're at now.
Okay, Annalisa.
With the library, I as far as I understand, they're kind of back at the drawing board right now. But I'd be open to looking into anything that the library proposes. It's a place where kids grow up. If I hadn't had the library when I was a kid, I wouldn't have, obviously it's a little bit different now, but I got 3 or 4 books every single week, and I went home and read those during the week. And that was like the highlight of my Saturday morning. So I think it's important that we look at that and consider it and look into the details of it. Whether I'm going to say City Council should pass it, it depends on what the numbers say and the support of the community as well.
PG, you guys, we're later in the campaign season here. You've obviously knocked on a lot of doors, talked to people. You've done a bunch of these kind of forums. Start with you, PG. What are you hearing? What's like the top 1 or 2 concerns, if there are any, that you hear from your constituents?
Well, taxes, of course, is one thing. They don't want to see our taxes go up. But other big thing, and we've been kind of at odds on it, is the bikes on the roads. And I'm not against bike riders, and I've had a lot of people say, "Hey, we're behind you 100%." I'm not against bike riders on roads, but I'm against the bike lanes on roads that they're putting on. I'd rather see more bike paths, and have them connect to where people can get, but not so many of the bike lanes where, you have kids, you have families. It's fine for somebody that's rides bikes all the time, but a novice biker, it's pretty dangerous. So I would rather see, instead of spending, and I've had a lot of people, as I'm knocking on doors, say, "Hey, we're behind you 100%. Roads, the busy roads are for cars. They shouldn't be putting bike lanes on there." And then also you lose parking on some of them where they put them where it takes away the parking. An example would be out on Overland Drive going west off 18th Avenue. There's a kind of a neighborhood park there. About 3-4 months ago, there were signs all the way along there, no parking. You have a bike lane on each side of the road, but you also have a bike path, and you have this beautiful park there and nowhere for anybody to park. And I came by there one day, and there was 2 cars parked there. They were doing the youth football. There's 2 cars, and that was the first time, and I glanced, and the post was still there, but they'd taken off one sign. And I think if you drive by there today, they've not only taken down that post, but they've taken down about 3-4 posts. So it's right. You still have the bike lane there, but you have people parking there. So you can't have bike lanes and lose parking too at the same time.
Do you think it's realistic that we can have enough of an addition to our trail system to get people on bikes where they need to go?
Well, 99% of the people are recreation users, and they would rather ride on a bike path than be on a road. The other 1%, they know what they're doing. They can ride on roads and cars don't bother them. But it's dangerous. If you have bike lanes like that, kids see somebody out on the road and say, "Hey, well, it must be safe." And it's really dangerous. If the car and a bike meet, the car wins all the time.
So Annalisa, we're hearing taxes, bike lanes. Is that the top things you're hearing also?
When I'm knocking on the doors, I'm hearing a lot about safe streets. The biggest thing I'm hearing about safe streets is slowing traffic down in residential neighborhoods. I've had a number of people asking me for stop signs, for speed bumps, so that their kids can play in the yard, at their front yard, and not worry about the neighborhood cars zooming past their house. And it's really interesting because a lot of times those are on cul-de-sacs, so it's surprising to me how fast people are driving in those residential areas, which comes down to a little bit of street design too. Streets that are designed wide promote fast driving. So it's just, that's probably the biggest thing that I'm hearing from people when I'm knocking on the doors.
And what about the issue of the bike lanes and roads?
Yes, I'm for bike lanes. I think people are going to bike on the road. It's a law that you can. Let's keep people safe. So having a protected, I would actually like to see a protected bike lane versus just a lane, but keeping those people safe. No matter what mode of transportation you choose to use, you should be able to get to and from where you're going without worrying about your life. That one, I'm thinking of the one particular bike fatality on Valley High Drive. That was on a bike trail. She was crossing the road as a vehicle hit her. So she was crossing from trail to trail. She wasn't on the road. So that poses a problem as well. So whether
that was in a crosswalk. So I mean, it's a terrible, tragic accident. But I mean, it was right in a crosswalk. So whether you're on a bike or you're out walking, I mean, it's dangerous. So you have to pay attention. So yeah.
Yeah, and my understanding is there's recently an advisory board that's being put into place with the city, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So that's exciting to hear too, so that we can find solutions to keep everybody safe, because as the density of Rochester grows and people choose different modes of transportation, or we live really close to where we work, there's no reason to get into a car and drive. So if you choose not to. So having something like that so that council can make better decisions based on the advice of a committee.
Watching a special edition of Our Town, we're talking to the Ward 6 council candidates of the Rochester City Council, Patrick P.J. Day and Annalisa Johnson. Jen, you have a question?
Well, I do. Let's talk about, we've talked about brick and mortar buildings, but what about some of these other businesses, the food trucks and Uber and Airbnb? Where do you stand on those?
Does the city have a role to regulate all these
Well,
businesses?
I think they do. Like the food trucks, I mean, they went on for a long time, and they made the regulations, I think, pretty stiff. But if you owned a restaurant, if you had a brick restaurant, you'd want the regulations to be pretty stiff. I think that, they've got regulations where they can be. So yeah, I think food trucks are a thing in the big cities, and we're getting to be a big city, so food trucks should be welcome. But they do need to have places where they can be, where they're not in direct competition with people that are paying taxes and paying for their buildings.
So do you feel like they should not be downtown?
Well, they should be downtown, but not right next to businesses. With competing businesses. A lot like when they were doing the nighttime one. I watched as they were going back and forth on the nighttime, and I thought, well, if there really was a demand for nighttime, one of those restaurants would stay open at night. I mean, when I was growing up, I worked at Perkins as a 16-year-old, and when people would come from, we call it the bar rush, I guess. They'd come from the bars into Perkins. So if there was a demand downtown for that, you'd have more businesses at restaurants that would stay open at night. So I don't know if the demand is quite there. I mean, if they want something quick, they still have the drive-throughs coming out of downtown. So.
Okay, Annalisa, what is your take on the food trucks?
I think they're slightly overregulated where they can park, and I see the reason. I see the reason why we started that way. It's kind of, it's a little frustrating in the sense of opening a small business as a small business owner too, who has gone from that mobile business to something brick and mortar. Having those regulations prohibits starting and building and growing your business. I know of one food truck who just opened a brick and mortar, actually. So that's really refreshing in the sense of like having that starting point and being able to move from there. Should there be fees and regulations to a certain degree? Absolutely. If you're parking on a city street, paying those parking fees, absolutely. The city should get a return for having those spaces available, and that's taken away from parking. However, some of the other stuff, it seems a little like you have to park way over here, and that's not where the people are, which makes it really challenging as a small business owner to go and want to start something like that when you're not having the customer base. And
So what do you say to the businesses who are saying, but wait, we're paying higher taxes and these leases, and you're letting someone come in for less money?
Get a food truck. Think outside the box a little bit, you know? I'm sure a lot of those people started with a great idea, and that's, and that's fantastic. And I think with the number of visitors that are in downtown and the number of people that work downtown, competition's good, in my opinion, and it keeps everybody busy.
Does that include the taxis? I mean, that's another issue that cities are grappling with. And Uber, you invest a lot of money in a fleet of cabs, and then somebody with their Uber just comes and picks them up and they didn't have to make that investment. Does the city be regulating them, allowing them?
I have to look into exactly what the regulations are. Or what the proposed regulations are. I think it's something our city needs, is more modes of transportation or more of that ride share sort of idea.
So you'd favor less regulation on like a Uber?
Well, the city's looking at it right now. And I mean, they're comparing it to the St. Paul Uber ordinance. So they're looking at it right now, they came a long ways, because it wasn't too long ago they were pretty much against that. So I think that is something. I mean, we need to look at, we're a modern city, we need to look at that, but then they also need to be fair to the taxi drivers. And so they're looking at both of those. They're looking at the Uber ordinance from St. Paul, but then they're also looking at Rochester's current taxi ordinance. So they're all playing on the same level playing field. So.
And Airbnb too, the hotel businesses. It's kind of the same.
It's been going on for a long time. I didn't realize it, but it's been going on in Rochester for quite a while. So I think we should make sure that it's being regulated, make sure that it's being inspected, like rental properties, make sure it has the inspections and make sure they're paying the taxes. But it's been going on for quite a while.
Right, and these are all just parts of the growing pains of becoming a larger city, which you will be dealing with if you end up on the council. How about transparency of government? This has been a big buzz phrase.
Recent dust up.
So what is your take on, should council members be able to meet for a dinner between sessions? Annalisa, do you want to start with this one?
If council members are going to meet for dinner between sessions, you're at work, you're on the clock, in my opinion, if the whole council is meeting. So it should be videoed or televised and somewhere that people can easily attend. I personally think if you're going to go from a committee meeting to a council meeting, you can have dinner catered in, or bring a brown bag lunch and eat right there at City Hall. So people can join you then if you want them to.
I don't miss many meals, but I don't think, I think it's time for the dinner meetings to end. I talked to a person the other night, and he said, well, he goes to a lot of them. He said it isn't fair. The council and the city administrators, they're off at one table and everybody else is over there. So it'd be one thing if they were sitting right side you so that they could partake in what the discussions are, but to have that separation with everybody together, I'm totally against that. So yeah, I'd be for canceling the dinner meetings.
What one thing really irks you? We'll start with you, PJ, that if I could wave a magic wand as soon as I got in the council, I would pass what would it be for the city?
I'd pass a law to clean up 2nd Street. I can't believe with the plannings, not a whole lot. I mean, somebody must have thought that this is really going to look good. But to me, 2nd Street, going west of Highway 52 is dangerous. I mean, you have plantings going down the middle of the road. I own one apartment. Sometimes the Post makes it sound like I have a whole bunch, but I have one apartment building, and it's over in the uptown area there. And it's dangerous. I mean, the turns trying to come out onto 2nd Street with all the plantings, Beatles Bar, you go there, and if you go in there, I mean, it's dangerous for all forms of transportation. If you have bikes, you can't see people. And you're coming downtown, the same is they have the crosswalks, and they're the newfangled crosswalks that light up, on the road. But a lot of us aren't used to seeing that. We're used to seeing flashing lights to stop and stuff. So I mean, it's dangerous. People walk up behind a tree, and then all of a sudden they're on a road. So if I could wave my magic wand, that'd be the first thing I'd do, is I'd clean up 2nd Street and make it be a road again.
Great.
All right.
Wave your wand.
Am I passing something, or am I doing, if I could?
Whatever you could magically do.
I would like to
council.
change the us versus them mentality on council.
Talk a little bit more about that.
it's not, sometimes it feels like us or them. Does that make sense? I don't know if you've ever listened to a council meeting or watched a council meeting, and there seems a lot of friction, which is pretty typical with the, or I shouldn't say pretty typical, pretty not surprising, because everybody has their own opinion, and everybody should have their own opinion. But it should be about the city, and it should be about the community, the members of the city and our community, and not about what I want or what you want specifically. It's about what our ward wants and what our city wants. So working towards that best interest of the city and the community.
And what is the best way to get that information about what your ward wants?
There's a lot of ways to do that. Personally, I have a number of social media outlets, Twitter, Facebook. I have a website as well. I will be having weekly coffee meetings to meet with people. Another way to do that is to build community and neighborhood associations. Yes.
And you too?
Well, I currently have a Facebook page. I was working on a website, and that went by the wayside, but I have a Facebook page, but I have an email address, phone number, so people could reach me day or night.
Wonderful.
So.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today on Our Town. It's been a great conversation, and we look forward to covering one more race next week.
That will be candidates for the Ward 2 City Council seat will be joining us. That's incumbent council member Michael Wojcik and his challenger Scott Haas is our guest.
See you then on Our Town, the show about Rochester.
I think I finally found It's good to be alive right about now.